This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, we're fortunate enough to have immigration attorney Ramesh Khurana. Welcome to the show, Ramesh.
Thank you very much, Frank.
You're most welcome. So you're an immigration attorney. A lot of people in the audience are interested all about the immigrations. Do you think the immigration reform is going to happen in the House?
First of all, Frank, I would like to thank you for inviting me to the studios and talk to you about some current topics. I'm pretty sure the first question which you are throwing at me is so interesting. Now, Frank, you are asking whether immigration reforms are going to be passed this year.
The Senate passed it. The House is sitting in the House.
Yeah, what I said is going to be passed this year.
Okay.
Now, that's the question, and I think it's $1 million questions.
And you don't have the answer.
I
don't have a crystal ball here.
I will answer it, Frank.
Okay.
Because we have been waiting for the immigration reforms for the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years. But I must say that we have come to very close to the situation where probably these immigration reforms are going to be the reality. When it happens, we do not know. But if my reading of the situation is, probably by the end of this year, we should see something on the president's table.
Okay, president's table.
Yes.
It could be piecemeal, but it will be something there.
I don't think it's going to be a piecemeal legislation because President Obama's stand has been that it has to be a comprehensive immigration reform package because Democratic Party or President Obama thinks that this is the only way that you can push through the immigration reforms. Now, if you remember, that Republican Party, after their defeat, when at the time of president election, when President Obama was elected second time,
2012.
Yeah, they immediately came forward with a proposal that let us increase the numbers for H-1B visa holders. They wanted to raise it to 195,000 from the existing numbers of 65,000. And President Obama said, no, let's work on comprehensive immigration reforms.
Well, Ramesh, I hope it happens.
I hope too.
I always look at the brighter horizon. So this may be a brighter horizon. But I want to talk about some of the issues that you just talked about, some of the visa issues. And one of the issues that a lot of people in the community is interested in is the visitor visa because they want to come over here, visit their friends, with their family, and so on and so forth. So what exactly they have to do to get the visitor visa, and who has the responsibility to issue that visa?
Frank, as regards visitor visa is concerned, we call it B1, B2 type of visa.
Okay.
And this has to be issued by the U.S. embassies or consulates
of the host country.
Abroad, of the host country. Now, let's say talk about India. Now, U.S. Embassy has its office in New Delhi.
Okay.
Then there are some consulate offices in Bombay, Chennai, and Hyderabad.
Okay.
So whenever somebody is interested to visit the United States, now it may be for the sake of pleasure or for the sake of business, they have to present themselves before the embassy official or before the consulate, U.S. consulate. So consulates and embassies, these are controlled and regulated by the U.S. State Department in Washington, D.C.
But who makes the decision in terms of giving a visitor visa to the individual? The embassy has to make decisions?
Yes.
And what do they look for?
Okay. Now, first of all, just to answer your first question,
sure,
the decision has to be made by the person who's the officer at the consulate or the embassy, who's interviewing the applicant for the visitor visa or for, I would say, B1, B2 visa. And that person hardly has 1 or 2 minutes. Now, you would say how that person can make a decision.
So they have to make elevator speech.
Well, even they do not have time to make an elevator speech. So what they do is, I tell you, now it's a simple concept. They are looking at the preconceived intent of the person who is presenting himself before the immigration officer.
Himself or herself?
Yes, himself or herself, sure. Now, because they want to make sure that the person who is being given visitor visa doesn't abuse the status of the temporary nature of the visa and decides to come and settle down here permanently.
Okay.
You know that 11 million people are estimated to be illegals. They have been overstaying their visas.
Oh, that's a true statement. I want to talk a little bit about the how people in the audience will be able to reach you in case they need some help with immigration? So can you tell people how
Oh,
to?
sure. I can be reached two ways. Of course, people can contact me on my phone, which is 301-548-9595. And second best way to reach me is through an email, which is very simple, americanimmigration, one word, @gmail.com.
Very good. Now, as you probably know, this is something called pre-clearance that I want to share a little bit about the airline does that. What does that mean and how does that work?
Frank, you are touching on a very, very vital issue. I think
It has nothing to do with the global thing that they talk about, a global pass?
not really.
Okay, so
You
two
know,
different things.
Yes. Pre-clearance is basically you are looking at the background information of the traveler to the United States, not in the United States, but before they take the flight to the United States. Let us say a person is coming from India. He is coming through Heathrow Airport.
And he or she is not a United States citizen. He or she is a citizen of India. That's the premises that you're talking about.
Okay, when we are talking about pre-clearance, even the United States citizen has to be pre-cleared. Now, at certain airports around the world, they have set up these pre-clearance centers. So what they think is that instead of creating congestion at the airport in the United States, they would like to do some of the work in the country from where they are taking their flight to the United States. So I was giving an example to you. Person is coming from India and he's taking his flight through the Heathrow Airport. So he is changing his flight at the Heathrow.
Which
at the Heathrow,
which is London.
London. So thanks. So at London Airport, in fact, there is an extension of CBP, which is Custom and Border Protection Force. Employees of the CBP, they are posted there at the Heathrow Airport, and they are working to pre-clear all these persons who are taking flight to the United States. So they will check them from security angle, they will see from agriculture products point of view, everything which is done when a person comes there and presents himself. I would always say he or himself, so for the sake of.
So their responsibility but you as an individual who's a traveler, who's traveling, as an example, from India, do not know that they are already taken the pre-clearance, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that is their responsibility, role they play.
Yes.
One of the things that people complain about, I've heard that in several places, even including the Congress, people have gone, Asian American community, and a lot of other community, Arab community has gone and talked about the intimidation they face when they come to the airport. Even if you have the immigration visa, you have to get a fingerprinted. It's not type of environment that you first see a face of America. It reminds you this is not what America is all about. America is a beautiful country, it's very inclusive, it's an open country, it's a great country to live, and I love and care deeply about this nation. But what would you do to change something like that? What exactly do they have to do?
Frank.
If you were the Secretary of DHS.
Okay, great. Frank, I think I will continue with the same policies as these are being implemented right now, because these go directly in relation to the security environment. Because you know that what happened after 9/11. So when we are talking about intimidation feeling when you come at the port of entry, I would say that most of the people, they welcome this kind of situation. I agree with you. Now, prior to 9/11, there was no process of taking fingerprints of non-citizens. When I talk about non-US citizens, now even basically green card holders. Now
They have to get a fingerprint.
They are fingerprinted. You know why? Because they are also called aliens, along with H-1B visa holders and visitors, because they have also to be found whether they are admissible to enter the United States or not. And that's why I think it's directly linked to the security environment, and we must welcome, because what's going on around the globe is good for everybody.
So do you support it?
Yes, I do support. And if you kindly agree, in most of the cases, it takes just about 2 minutes. It takes about 2 minutes, unless they find something and they want to go deeper into somebody's record and they take that person for secondary inspection, it may take longer. But those are very, very exceptional cases. I support it.
Okay, so let me shift the gear. Our audience will be very much interested in H visa, as you probably know. Tell us a little bit about H visa and how do you get it, and L visa. Tell us how do you get those visas.
Well, Frank, you are talking about two very important employment-based visas,
Okay.
which are H-1Bs and L-1s. Now, we need, I would say, at least 8 hours to talk about these visas. But given the limited time, I will tell you, H-1 visa is available to those people who are holding a minimum of bachelor degree, and there is a U.S. entity which is willing to file an H-1B petition on behalf of that person. So it's a professional occupation, and I don't want to use many technical words here, but I would like to simply say that it's a kind of use of theoretical and experience in some specialized fields, and those people are entitled for H-1B visas. And as you are aware, I know that you own a very big IT company.
Used to.
Okay.
I sold it.
Probably you filed H-1B visas
I'm
at some
sure
point.
my human resources did that.
Oh, okay, okay. So at this point, there is a quota of 65,000 numbers available for H-1B regular petitions. And if we are talking about those people who are holding master degrees or above, PhD degrees, there is a 20,000 number reserved for that. So there is a very long queue for getting these kinds of visas. Now, coming to the second part of your question about L1. L1, I can just sum up in saying, in the interest of time, that it's a kind of intra-company transfer. Like, let's say that there is a US parent company, it has got its subsidiary in India, and they want to transfer their person from India to the US parent company. So a person can be transferred who has worked with the Indian company at least for a period of 1 year during the last 3 years, and US parent company is willing to sponsor that company.
Okay.
If I get more time, I will explain in
Sure.
detail.
But there has been, I have been pro-immigration reforms. I think it's very important to our country that we need to provide the citizenships for those who are not citizens who came to this country. But the H-1 visa has been abused a lot. If you look at the, as soon as it opens up, there are only half a dozen companies that grab up and they take all the H-1 visas so quickly. And one of them has been defrauding it, and that's an Indian-owned company. So what advice do you have? It's just not increasing the number of the H-1 visas, it's basically to make sure people who are qualified, people who really want to come and work over here, people who could be productive, they get the opportunity.
Frank, I would like to say that I have heard, like you have heard,
Oh, those are facts.
that H-1B petition process has been abused, but by and large,
It is not.
by and large, it's not. Because
So is it fair?
I would say it's a fair system. You know, what happens is that I know that majority of the quota numbers, like I said, 65,000 numbers, those are grabbed by at least 10 large companies.
That's what I heard.
But what has happened in the recent past, earlier there used to be one type of visa, which was L1B visa, which is available for specialized knowledge, which a company's employee would possess. Now they started rejecting these kinds of petitions because they said, why do you need people to bring from India or China who have specialized knowledge if you can train people over here? Just import them training for 6 to 8 weeks and get people here. They started rejecting L1B petitions. So all these companies, they have resorted to filing H1B petitions. That's the reason that they are grabbing most of these positions. But one thing we have to remember, Frank, when we talk about abusing the H-1B petition, when these people come over here, if they want to maintain their good status, they have to be paid by these employers.
True.
And they have to follow those H-1B regulations very strenuously. So there is, I would say, there is a very limited scope of exploiting the system.
Okay, so if I was an audience sitting in the audience listening to our conversation, what kind of thing they need to do to change the status from visitor visa to H1 or L visa and so on and so forth?
Again, Frank, I would say this is a very good question. It happens all the time.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah, sometimes people are visiting United States.
Sure.
But one thing we have to remember, that there should not be any preconceived intent.
Well, that's the reason they got here in the first place, because they convinced the embassy folks that they don't have a preconceived notion to stay there.
You are 100% right. Because if there was no preconceived intent, so that's the reason that they got the visitor visa. Once they are here on a visitor visa, they have the opportunity, if they find a job, like US entity is willing to sponsor that person, But remember, there is a rule which is called 30-day, 60-day rule. If some petition is filed within 30 days of the arrival of the person, then there is a strong presumption of law that probably there was a preconceived intent. Like this is what he wanted to do. That's why he got his visa, he is here in the United States. But if you file the petition after lapse of 60 days, so this preconceived intent issue is gone. There is no such presumption. And
Can you change from visitor visa to H1 and L?
yes, definitely.
Living in this country?
Yes, you can do that.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes,
okay, that's
you
good.
can.
That's a good for the audience to know.
Yes, we can do that.
There has been a lot of abuse as we go through the immigration reform, and you probably heard in Washington Post, and I don't want to name any kind of companies over there. They brought people from China and they asked them to give $500,000 so they can get the visa, so they can get a green card. What do you think of that system? Is it being abused? Is it the right thing to do, and so on and so forth? And how they're being used? So there are a lot of rich folks maybe living in India. They have the cash, they have the money, they want to come to this country, and so they can get a visa. I don't want to say they want to buy the visa, but they can get a visa to live in this country. So tell us a little bit about that. How do you get it? Is it being misused and abused?
Frank, I think when you talk about $500,000, I think you are referring to the investment visa.
That's exactly right.
Which is, we in our immigration language, we call it EB-5 visa.
That is correct.
Now, in fact, there are two types of investments. One is $1 million and second is $500,000.
Okay.
$500,000 could be invested in high unemployment areas or rural areas which are designated by the State Department of Assessment and Taxation. So you have to look at specifically those zip codes where the unemployment rate would be very high as compared to national average is about 150%. Now, your comment was that some people were brought from China, they invested 500,000.
There have been, I don't want to name the company.
Yeah, sure. But I would not, frankly speaking, support these kinds of actions on behalf of any companies, because ultimately these kinds of people get stuck, because it's a very strenuous process. When we are talking about 500,000, $500,000, these funds have to be legitimate funds, and there should be a proper banking track record. Like money is moving, let's say, from Hong Kong Bank, and it's coming to Bank of America here, you have to show. Now, USCIS would like to ask, now, how did you acquire $500,000 or $1 million, which was placed with the Hong Kong Bank in Hong Kong? So they have to provide their tax returns. So there is a very strict monitoring, because they do not want illegitimate funds to move from Hong Kong to here. You also talked about Indian situation. Unfortunately, I would like to say the Reserve Bank of India has been controlling the flow of foreign exchange from India to the United States or any foreign country like anything. Especially as of now we are talking, now India's trade balance is going in the negative at this point, and our foreign exchange reserves are getting depleted very fast. Now, earlier any company could transfer $200,000 outside India without even taking Reserve Bank of India approval. Now, I heard about a few weeks back, they reduced that 200,000 limit to 75,000. Other issue which we face in regard to Indian national is that money can be transferred only from company to company. But who's getting the green card? It's not the company which is getting
It's
the
an
green
individual.
card. It's an individual. So that is really an issue. Like how an individual can transfer money from India to the United States. And we have to grapple with that kind of situation.
So if you have a choice for the audience between H visa, H1 visa, and L1, which one do you recommend?
First of all, it depends upon the situation. Like I said in my very brief presentation about the H1B, it's available to people who are holding at least a bachelor degree. Now,
Bachelor's degree from United States, a bachelor degree from somewhere else?
okay, that's a very good question. Bachelor degree could be a foreign degree.
Okay.
Or it could be a combination of bachelor degree plus work experience. When I talk about work experience, let us say a person has worked in the IT industry for 6 years. For each block of 3 years, that person gets the benefit of 1 year education. What we have to do is, we have to go to one of the evaluation companies here in the United States. They will evaluate those credentials and work experience. If they come up with the evaluation that this person possesses equivalent of a US bachelor degree, it has to be equivalent of US bachelor degree. Now, there are again issues like Indian degree, bachelor degrees can be had in 3 years, right?
Sure.
Whereas the US bachelor degree you can have only after spending 4 years.
Correct.
So that's an issue we are facing. So, but somehow for H1B there has not been much problem, but when we move to the next stage for filing green card application, we are having those issues. Now coming to L1, you do not have to hold a bachelor degree. Now
What do you have to, oh, so a company has to sponsor it?
Yes, company has to sponsor.
US company?
Yes, let's say a person is working as a manager
Sure.
in New Delhi.
Sure.
Now he has got 20 years of work experience.
Sure.
And he is holding the position of a general manager.
Sure.
So if he is holding one of the two positions, which is managerial or executive in nature, now that person can be sponsored on L1A visa.
Sure.
Absolutely no degree
Well,
requirement.
that's very
So
nice.
That's the major difference between H1B and L1.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Attorney, and thank you very much for coming to the show, Ramesh.
Thank you so much, Frank. It has been a great pleasure coming
Thank
to
you.
your
Thank
studios.
you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
This is Frank Islam. Thank you very much for watching our show.